Welcome to my presentation. We call it Homeschooling 101. And if you have never homeschooled before and can't believe that you are actually considering it, this presentation was made for you. I know a lot of you are looking into homeschooling as a possibility because you are feeling forced into it. And that can be a hard and scary place. So hopefully by listening to this, you can be relieved of some of those worries and feel empowered to take control of your child's education. I do want to clarify a few things to start off. One, I am not a lawyer, so I'm not giving you legal advice. And two, I am not paid by anyone. So any of the organizations or curriculum that I'm going to mention or recommend, it's because I know about it, I've used it. This is from my own personal experience, so that you can be aware that no one is giving me money for any of this. I was a homeschooler for 17 years here in California, and I felt like it was a major part of the reason my children are doing well out in the world today. I will be sharing the different ways that you can homeschool here in California, and I can tell you that I have done 3 of the 4 ways I'm going to be mentioning. But before I dive into ways to homeschool in California, I do want to spend a few minutes on some of the reasons I chose to homeschool. There are many reasons to homeschool, and I've listed a few here that really mattered to me. Curriculum choice. You can choose the politics in your materials, or you completely leave out the politics out of your materials. You can choose secular options or religious. You have the choice. Customized education. This is where you get to do the right kind of curriculum for your child. Do you have a superstar in math who hates to write? I had one of those. You can let them excel where they can and give them the extra attention in the areas that they might need it. You can also move at their pace. If they're not catching on to a particular concept, you can slow down, take the time to help them reach that really deep cognitive understanding. Or if they have already caught on, you can move on. There is no need for them to do busy work. Right now, there are no medical mandates, and this is a huge freedom of homeschooling. And if it is one of the major reasons I chose it also. Freedom. This is freedom to set your own schedule and lifestyle. You make the decisions about when, where, and how you choose to teach. This allows for the ability to go on field trips, pursue extracurricular activities that are unique to your family. It also lets you spend time on subjects with your kids that they might not get in public school. My kids like to do some really fun things like woodworking or calligraphy, robotics. My daughter wanted to learn how to crochet and sew. This allows you the ability to skip some of the subjects that our current political leaders also want to force on our children. Time. This was probably one of the main reasons I chose to homeschool. Your kids will not be waiting in line to be dropped off, waiting in line to enter the classroom, in line again for lunch, and in line to be picked up. You will save a lot of time just not waiting in line. You will be able to finish school well before the traditional school day would be done. We could add in things like dance lessons, horseback riding lessons, and still have time for dinner. And again, I'm going to mention there is no busy work, so everything you're teaching is very intentional and purposeful. You can add important skills to their day, like cooking, cleaning, balancing a budget, and basic home repairs to your agenda. Starting this journey can be difficult, so some important advice is to write out your reason. Why are you looking into homeschooling? Put it on a note card, make it into a giant poster if you want. Put it up somewhere that you can see it. I don't want you to think that this decision probably comes lightly, and I don't think that it does for any of you. It's actually all fun and games really in kindergarten, but homeschooling in junior high and high school can become very serious, and it really does have an impact on what your kids can do in their future. Your child's education is very important, and that's probably why you're watching this. And no one cares more about your individual child's future more than you do. I know that people have a lot of other reasons to homeschool as well, but writing out your reason will help you kind of solidify what you are doing and why you are doing it. I will mention here there is a movie you can watch if you need some help with starting the conversation with your kids or your spouse. It's called Class Dismissed, and it's available on their website. You can just download it and watch it. It's to rent or buy, though. You do have to pay for it. Again, I'm going to say here I'm not a lawyer, but right now there are 4 ways to homeschool in California. I'm going to cover each of these in more detail on the following slides, but the 4 main ways are to file your own private affidavit, to join a private satellite program, to hire a private tutor, or join a charter. This is actually a form of public school. The first one I'm going to talk about is to file your own affidavit. This information that I have listed right here is from the HSLDA website. HSLDA is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and they are a wonderful group whose goal is to protect homeschooling across the USA. I will have more info about them in a later slide, but I wanted to make sure and give them credit for this information. To file your own affidavit, you will need to visit the California Department of Education's website, and you will need to fill out the necessary paperwork. If you are taking your children out of public school, you can fill out the paperwork online, and then you let the school know your intentions and that you have done that. After you have done the online form, you will need to follow the steps listed here. So it has listed, you need to maintain an attendance register. You must teach in English. You must be capable of teaching. The part that says provide instruction in courses commonly taught. So language arts, math, science, social studies, health. It even lists driver's training, which I think is interesting because my local high school doesn't actually have driver's training anymore. You do need to maintain their immunization records or personal belief exemptions, and I highly suggest you write that out if you are maintaining a personal belief exemption. You should maintain a list of the courses of study and maintain a list of instructors and their addresses and qualifications. So if you are hiring someone to teach science or history, you want to make sure and have that written down as well. Another way to homeschool in California is to join a PSP, or private satellite program. These programs will actually file that paperwork that was listed before for the affidavit on the state, with the state on your behalf. Some of them are going to offer help in other areas too, like planning field trips, offering classes, park days, community events. They will kind of be an umbrella for you of the separation between you and the state, and they will be there to help you do a good job with homeschooling. They will have different requirements also, but in general, they're going to want kind of the same things. They're going to want you to have attendance, and they will tell you how many days you need to do that. It's roughly 175. You will need to submit your curriculum plans. You will need to pay them, and they will require that you turn in vaccine information or waiver. And just so that you know, that you are not required to immunize your children to be a part of this, but they are still collecting that information. If you happen to live in the San Gabriel Valley of California, I highly recommend Western Christians PSP. They're a fantastic program, and the people running it have been doing this for many years. They are a wealth of information. Hiring a private tutor. So this information right here is again from the HSLDA website, and this is the form of homeschooling that I know the very least about. And I know a lot of you are probably very interested in this option. Again, I got this information from the HSLDA website, and you can read here what they've listed the requirements are. This has typically been used by movie stars and the super wealthy in the past, but has certainly gained some popularity recently. This is also where the idea of the micro school or pod schools would fit in. The basic idea is that you create your own one-room schoolhouse and hire your private tutor to teach your children. There are benefits to this type of arrangement, and that it can be much more like a traditional school or much less. It's really as much as you want it to be. As more parents are looking in to pull their children from the public school system, these kinds of groups are gaining popularity. You can find groups on Facebook promoting these pods or micro schools, and I will suggest a website called Homeschool Coaches. They are a resource if you'd like some more information about pods. This next one I'm going to mention, I want to be really clear on, because there are actually 2 types of charter schools that people might reference. One is a brick and mortar type that is privately managed and usually for profit, and it typically operates much like a public school. That is not the kind of charter school I'm talking about here. I am talking about the homeschool version of a charter school, which is a state-run version that allows parents to be the primary teacher for their students to be at home while having kind of a supervising teacher who oversees multiple students. So let me talk to you a little bit about this. It does not require kids to be vaccinated. I know that's a big question, but it does require the paperwork to be turned into them along with waivers, either one. They will provide money for curriculum and activities sometimes, so they will help you get the curriculum you need to teach your children. But again, this is secular, so you can't just use Christian curriculum to turn into them. This particular group has been facing budget cuts and a lot of bad press from both the local public sector and the traditional homeschoolers. So the teachers' unions have been fighting very hard over the last few years to prohibit growth, and really they're trying to get rid of charter schools. They do not like them at all. The current governor also tried to stop them from accepting new students during the pandemic by freezing the amount of money they received. But what was really awesome to watch was when current homeschooling families were willing to give up their resources so that the schools could afford to accept more students. Now, when I say also that it gets a bad rap from traditional homeschoolers, I should clarify that that's because the charter schools are also still beholden to the state. And as more people have chosen this option, it has become more and more restrictive. And so it's just a little bit trickier to be a part of a charter school. So it is very much that you are part of a public school. So if you go and turn in the paperwork to your current public school as you're pulling your children out, you would tell them, oh, and I'm enrolling them in this charter school, and the public school would recognize them as another public school. If you can't afford to homeschool any other way, this is a very good option of a way to homeschool. If you do this, you will have a TF, or teacher facilitator. Sometimes they go by other names. I've heard them called ESs and other things, but it's basically a person who will check in with you and assess your child on a regular basis. They will work to make sure that the things that you need to turn into the state are turned in so that you get credit for everything that's going on. This does require some regular testing. I have an example here. iReady is a test that they would give the students, and it's usually by the trimester, so 3 times a year. And then once a year, they will also have state testing, and that will be done in person at a location that they choose. This option is also kind of in flux. I would say that laws are changing currently. So there's a lot of legislative updates. This has come into many legal battles. And again, right now it's an option, but I don't know how long that it will be an option. So those are the 4 basic ways to homeschool in California. I'm going to go on to some other resources that will help you out in this area. I do want to say again here, when it comes to resources, I do not work for any of these people. I am a regular member of HSLDA, and that's because I 100% believe in their mission, and they support homeschooling across the U.S., and they help to maintain our freedom to do that, and I just really appreciate what they do. Keep in mind, this is also a very small list. There are a lot of other resources out there. This is just the few that I happen to know of, so I've put them up here for you. CHIA is the Christian Home Educators Association of California, and they are a great organization. Again, they have been around for years and years, and they have so many resources. The California Homeschool Network also has a great online presence and a lot of information. Western Christian PSP, I mentioned them before. They have something that's a part of their group called the Center for Creative Learning, and that's where they offer classes so that you can hire an English teacher, a math teacher, those extra things that you might need to help supplement your child's learning. There's a few other groups that are around as well. They are not necessarily a PSP. They just are homeschool groups that you can join and be a part of. Firm Foundation Christian Academy offers a lot of classes. Pathfinders is a great group to be a part of if you are looking for classes that accept charter funds. So if you'd like to take art, history, math, science, Spanish, they have a wealth of classes, and they are secular, and so you can use charter funds to pay for those courses. EIE, Excellence in Education, they've also been around for many years and have some wonderful teachers. They also have a great drama department, so if you have kids who love acting and theater, this might be a group you'd like to be a part of. The last one I have here listed is a book, and it's by Kathy Duffy, again, longtime homeschooler. And this book is How to Choose a Homeschool Curriculum. If you are just starting out on this path, this is a fantastic book to buy. And as much as I want to support her and getting money for her book, if you are doing this with some friends, maybe you want to buy 1 or 2 copies and kind of share them, and because it's really more of a reference book is how I would describe it. So now let's talk about what it looks like to actually get started with homeschooling. So you want to figure out which of those 4 options will work for you and your family. What kind of homeschool that works for you will depend on a lot of factors: your schedule, how much money you have, what abilities you have. One thing to note is the number of people that I have tell me, they say, I could never homeschool because I just don't have the patience. And I'm just going to encourage you that you are already homeschooling. If your kids are in public school, you're actually homeschooling more than you realize when you help your kids with their homework, or even when you have them help you bake cookies. I had my oldest in public school for 2 years, and I was spending almost 2 hours a day doing first grade homework with him. And in reality, we could have been done for the school day if I had spent that time homeschooling. I'm going to suggest that you might want to put on kind of a new mindset. If you were once part of the people who said, I will never homeschool, I want you to know that you are in very good company. I myself and many of my very close friends have said those famous last words. Yes, homeschooling comes with some stigmas attached, but that has already been changing over the last 20 years. And really, I feel like COVID just actually had a huge effect on how people perceived homeschooling. One of the questions that we often laughed at is when they say, oh, what about socialization? Let me assure you that this isn't the problem that maybe it once was when there were only 5 homeschoolers in the city. There are so many people around, and there are so many activities, so many options. It would actually require a whole separate presentation just for me to be able to explain to you why socialization is not a problem. And I'm going to tell you, in this new mindset, a great goal for you to have is to think, I want to be the kind of teacher that I wish my kids had. If your kids have been in the public school system before, you've dealt with wonderful teachers and you've dealt with rough teachers. And if you can make it your goal to be the kind of teacher that you wish your child had, it will create a wonderful learning environment for them. My next point is joining organizations that will help. This is going back to that list of resources on the previous page. They can help you find a group to join. You do not have to do homeschooling alone. Again, that goes back to that socialization problem. Do this with community. Do this with a group of friends. And so that's my next one, is actually create a community. Find your people, work together. Many hands make light work is one of my favorite sayings from Little House on the Prairie. And this is very true with homeschooling. Some very quick advice is that the subjects that are easiest to do in groups are history and science. I found that meeting once a week for experiments was one of the things that my kids always looked forward to. And it is kind of hard to sometimes want to put together a whole bunch of resources to make one little science experiment. But when you're doing it with a group, it definitely makes it feel more like an adventure and a little less drudgery of assembling those pieces you need to make a rocket blast off. My next note is to train yourself. You are going to want to be good at this, and there are a lot of resources to do this. So there are many books at your local library. They have wonderful conventions to attend that will help train you for homeschooling. One is called the Great Homeschool Conventions, and it is in Ontario, California. That is a fantastic event to attend. It is fun. It is encouraging. They have vendor booths. I highly suggest it. Chia also puts on the convention, and again, just a tremendous resource for everything you need to know about homeschooling will be there. There are also videos on YouTube and videos from curriculum suppliers. I will make a suggestion here that you look for videos that are made prior to 2020. Keep in mind, this is not pandemic schooling. So all those videos that popped up in April of 2020 are not really what you're looking for. What everyone saw happen to the public school students who came home was pretty awful. That was not homeschooling. That was what we would call pandemic schooling. Now for the fun part. I actually think it's fun, is to start looking at curriculum. I know that that can seem overwhelming and not necessarily fun at first, but I will tell you it became one of my favorite parts of homeschooling. For curriculum, this will depend a lot on what type of homeschooling you choose. If you join a micro school and you hired a private teacher, you might end up doing what they tell you to do for curriculum, or you could request certain books with them. If you join a charter school, there has been a lot of freedom in choosing your curriculum. It has more recently that has changed and there's a little less freedom, but I still believe that you can pretty much choose what curriculum you use. But I'm going to give you some very basic advice for starting this journey. And that is pick a curriculum to start. Keep it simple and focus on the main subjects. You want to have math, English, history, science, PE. Those are the big five. Anything else that's out there is kind of a bonus. You have some options in that you could pick a curriculum that offers all subjects. It has it all listed out for you by day, what to do, math, science, English, history. You can get curriculums like that. My Father's World and Sunlight are two that offer all your subjects and tell you what to do, broken down per day. But you can also go and find the curriculum you want for each subject. So for math, you can look at Saxon, Singapore, Horizons, BJU Press, Life of Fred. I love Think Well for older children. That's an online math curriculum. But again, I would suggest keeping it simple to start. And something just to recognize is the first curriculum that you pick will very likely be terrible. Now, this is most likely not the curriculum's fault, but probably more likely you learning how to adjust to homeschooling. But I'm going to give you permission right now. Go ahead and blame the curriculum. Dump it, say it was all the curriculum's fault, and find a new one. Know that's okay to blame the curriculum and move on. And in this moment, I'm also going to let you know that the first year of homeschooling is the hardest. You are adjusting to everything. It really is a change in lifestyle, and it does get easier, I promise. So my next suggestion is going to be to consider what your friends are doing when it comes to curriculum. I really enjoyed doing science and history with a buddy. We could take turns doing experiments. For history, we could do hands-on crafts or activities that would make something more memorable. I just highly suggest looking around and seeing what, my 5-year-old's best friend is doing for science, because it is more fun to build models of planets with a buddy. And my next note is especially true for English, math. You want to choose what fits you. So that's considering your teaching style and your child's learning style. There is no perfect curriculum. So you want to figure out what kind of teacher you are and what kind of learners your children are. There is a group called Curriculum Coaches, and you can hire someone to help you find the right fit of curriculum for you, or you can just do trial and error. Both work. Now this next little dot that I have there, the cost. I do want to tell you to count the cost. And this choice is not without consequences, but it's also not without benefits. It is a little bit more expensive to homeschool than it is to put your kids in public school. But I do want you to keep in mind how much. It's not a huge expense. It's really more about time. Because when it comes to the expense, you can get curriculum for pretty cheap and sometimes free. I would suggest the local library has a ton of resources. There's yard sales, eBay, even the thrift store is a great resource. Amazon, of course, has tons of books. But I'm also going to mention that Barnes & Noble has a large curriculum section. They are a great resource. At the bottom of this slide, I have listed that there was a handout. Now, there was a flyer when we did this presentation in person a while back, and hopefully we will have a link to that flyer on the website somewhere near the link to this presentation. It had on there our favorite curriculums from each subject to choose from, and that was kind of garnered from a group of us homeschoolers, so you can see all the different ones that we used and really liked. I believe that homeschooling is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your children, and I hope you have found this presentation helpful in starting you on your homeschooling journey.